Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne. Chapter 19, in which Passepartout takes a little too lively interest in his master in what follows. Hong Kong is only a small island secured to the England by the Treaty of the Nanking, and after the War of 1842, in a few years the colonizing genius of Great Britain had established there an important city and created the Port Victoria. The island is situated at the mouth of the Canton River, and 60 miles only to separate it from the Portuguese city of Macau. Built on the other shore, Hong Kong must necessarily vanquish Macau in a commercial struggle, and now the greatest part of the Chinese transportation is done through the English city. Docks, hospitals, wharves, warehouses, and a Gothic cathedral, the government house, macadam-sized streets would all lead to one to believe that the commercial cities of the countries of Kent or Surrey, traversing the terrestrial sphere, had found a place at this point in China, nearly at its antipodes. Passepartout, with his hands in his pockets, sauntered towards the port of Victoria, and looking at the palanquins and the curtained carriages, still in favour of the Celestial Empire, and all the crowd of the Chinese and Japanese and Europeans hurrying along the streets, in some things it was like Bombay, Calcutta, or Singapore, that is a worthy fellow of finding again on his route. Thus, there is a dust track of the English towns all around the world. Passepartout arrived at Victoria Port, and there, at the mouth of the Canton River, was a perfect swarm of the ships of all nations: English, French, American, Dutch, war, merchant vessels, Japanese or Chinese crafts, junks, sempas, tanks, and even flower boats, which formed so many parters floating on the waters. Walking along, Passepartout noticed about a certain number of natives dressed in yellow, all quite in advanced age. Having gone through the Chinese barber to be shaved a la Chinese, he was learned of Figaro of the shop, who spoke pretty good English, that these ancient men were at least 80 years old, and at this age the privilege of wearing yellow, the imperial color. Passepartout found this very funny without knowing exactly why. His beard was shaved, he repaired from the wharf from which the Carnac would leave, and there he perceived Fix walking up and down, which he was not astonished at all, but the detective showed upon his face the marks of great disappointment. Good, replied Passepartout to himself, that will be bad for the gentlemen of the Reform Club. He accosted Fix with a merry smile, without seeming to notice the vexed air of his companion. The detective had good reason to fret about the infernal luck that was pursuing him. No warrant! It was evident that the warrant was running after him, that I could reach him only if he stopped some days in this city. Now Hong Kong being the last British territory on the route, that this Mr. Fogg would escape him finally, and if he did not succeed in detaining him there. Well, Monsieur Fix, have you decided to come as far as America? Asked Passepartout. Yes, replied Fix, between his closed teeth. Well then, said Passepartout, shouting with laughter, I knew very well that you could not separate, sir. Come and change your berth. Come. Both entered the ticket office and engaged cabins for 4 persons, but the clerk told him that the repairs of the Carnac had been completed, and the steamer would leave at 8 o'clock in the morning. In the evening, not the next morning, had been announced. Very good. That will suit my master. I am going to inform him. At this moment, Fix took an extreme step. He was determined to tell Passepartout everything, in the only means, perhaps, he had retaining Phileas Fogg for a few days in Hong Kong. Leaving the office, Fix offered to treat his companion in a tavern. Passepartout had his time, and he accepted Fix's invitation. Uh, a tavern opened on the quay. It had an inviting appearance. Both entered. It was a large room, finely decorated, at the back of which the camp bed, furnished with cushions. Upon this bed was lying a number of sleepers. 30 customers in the large room occupied a small tables of plated rushes. Some emptied pints of English beer, ale, or porter, other jugs of alcoholic liquor, gin, or brandy. Besides, most of them were smoking long, red clay pipes, stuffed with little balls of opium mixed with essence of rose. Then, from time to time, some smoker, overcome, would fall down under the table, and the waiters of the establishment, taking him by the head and feet, were carrying him on the camp bed alongside another. 20 of these sots were thus laid side by side in the last stage of brutishness, and Fix and Passepartout understand that they entered a smoking house haunted by those wretched, stupefied, lean, idiotic creatures, to whom mercantile England sells annually 10 million 400,000 worth of fatal drug called opium. The sad millions are these, levied on one of the most destructive vices of human nature. The Chinese government had tried hard to remedy such an abuse by severe law, but in vain. From the rich classes, whom the use of opium was first formally reserved, it descended to lower classes, and the ravaged can no longer be arrested. Opium was smoked everywhere, and it was always in the Middle Empire. Men and women gave themselves up to this deplorable passion, which they are accustomed to inhaling the fumes. They can no longer do without it, except by suffering terrible cramps in the stomach. A great smoker can smoke as many as 8 pipes a day, but he dies in 5 years. Now, it was one of the numerous smoking houses of this kind which swarmed even in Hong Kong that Fix had Passepartout and entered with the intention of refreshing themselves. Passepartout had no money, but he accepted the willing politeness of his companion, ready to return him at the proper time and place. They were they called for 2 bottles of port, to which the Frenchman did full justice, whilst Fix, more reserved, observed his companion with the closest attention. They talked of one thing and another, especially the excellent idea that Fix had taken the passage of Karnak, and the bottles now being empty, Passepartout rose to inform his master that the steamer would leave several hours in advance of the time announced. Fix detained him. "One moment," he said. "What do you wish, Monsieur Fix?" "I have some serious matters to talk to you about." "Serious matters?" cried Passepartout, emptying the few drops of wine remaining in the bottom of the glass. "Very well. We will talk about them tomorrow. I have not the time today." "Remain," replied Fix. "It concerns your master." Passepartout, at this phrase, looked attentively at the questioner. The expression of Fix's face seemed singular to him. He took seat again. "What do you have to say to me?" Fix placed his hand on his companion's arm in lowering his voice. He asked him, "You have guessed who I was?" "Parbleu!" said Ned. "I'm going to tell you everything." "Now that I know everything, my friend. Ah, that's pretty tough. But go on. Let me first tell you that these gentlemen have put themselves to a very useless expense." "Useless? You speak confidently. You may not know the size of his thumb." "I do know it. 20,000 pounds." "55,000!" replied Fix, grasping the Frenchman's hand. "What?" cried Passepartout. "Monsieur Fogg would have dared 55,000 pounds. Well, well, all the more reason that I should doubt not to lose an instant." Rising again, 55,000 pounds, replied Fix, who forced Passepartout to sit down again, having ordered take a brandy. "And if I succeed, I will get a reward of 2,000 pounds. Do you wish 500 of them on condition that you help me? Help me? Help you?" cried Passepartout, whose eyes were open. "Yes, to help me detain Mr. Fogg in Hong Kong for a few days." "Phew!" said Passepartout. "What are you saying? How have you not satisfied my master followed with suspecting his faithfulness? Do these gentlemen wish to throw new obstacles in his way? I am ashamed for them." "Ah, what do you mean by that?" asked Fix. "I mean it's simple indelicacy. It's about the same stripping Mr. Fogg and putting his money in their pockets. Ah, that is the very thing we are coming to." "But it is a trap!" cried Passepartout, who was getting lively under the influence of brandy in which Fix was plying him, and he drank without noticing. "It's a real trap. Gentlemen, colleagues," Fix began haughtily, "colleagues, members of the Reform Club, you must know, Monsieur Fix, that my master is an honest man. When William he intends to wear it fairly. But who do you think I am?" asked Fix, fastening his "Parbleu, an agent of the members of the Reform Club with a mission to interfere with my master's journey, which is singularly humiliating, although it has sometimes that I already guessed your business. I have taken good care not to enclose it to Mr. Fogg. He knows nothing?" asked Fix quickly. "Nothing," replied Passepartout, emptying his glass once more. The agent passed his hand over his forehead. He hesitated. What he ought to do? The error of Passepartout seemed sincere, but he rendered his plan more difficult. It was evident that this young man was speaking with perfect good faith, and that he was not his master's accomplice, which Fix had feared. "Well," he said to himself, "since he is not his accomplice, he will aid me." The detective had an advantage of a second time. Besides, he had no more time to wait. At any cost, Fogg must be arrested at Hong Kong. "Listen," said Fix, in an abrupt tone. "Listen carefully to me. I am not, you think, that is, an agent of the member of the Reform Club." "Bah!" said Passepartout, looking at him in just. "I am a police detective. I am charged with a mission by the Metropolitan Government." "You, a detective?" "Yes, and I will prove it." said Fix. "Here's my commission." And the agent, taking a paper from his pocketbook, showed the companion of a commission signed by Commissioner of the Central Police. Passepartout, stunned, unable to articulate a word, looked at Fix. "The bed of Mr. Fogg," continued Fix, "is only a pretext of what you are in the dupes. You and his colleagues of the Reform Club have an interest in assuring himself of your unconscious complicity." "But why?" cried Passepartout. "Listen. On the 28th of September ultimo, a robbery of £55,000 was committed at the Bank of England by an individual whose description was they were able to obtain. Now look at the description, and is a feature for that of Mitchell Mr. Fogg." "Humbug!" cried Passepartout, striking the table with his clenched fist. "My master is the most honest man in the world." "How do you know?" replied Fix. "You were not even acquainted with him. You entered the service the day of his departure. He left precipitately, under a senseless pretext, without trunks, and left him carrying a man with a large sum of banknotes. And you dare maintain that he's an honest man?" "Yes, yes," replied the poor fellow maniacally. "Do you wish, then, to be arrested as his accomplice?" Passepartout dropped his head in his hands, and could no longer be recognized. He did not look at the detective. Phileas Fogg, the deliverer of Ouda, a brave, generous man, a robber. Yet how many presumptions were there against him? Passepartout tried to force back the suspicions which would slip into his mind. He would never believe in his master's guilt. "To conclude, what do you want of me?" he said to the detective by a strong effort. "See here," replied Fix. "I have tracked Mr. Fogg to this point, and I have not yet received a warrant of arrest, which I asked from London. You must help me, then, to keep him in Hong Kong." "I? Help you? And I will assure you with the reward of £2,000 promised by the Bank of England." "Never!" replied Passepartout, wanting to rise, and fell back, feeling his reason and strength at once escaping him. "Monsieur Fix," he said, stammering, "even if everything you told me should be true, if my master should be the robber whom you seek, which I deny, I have been in his service, and I have seen him kind and generous, and betray him, never, no, not for all the gold in the world. I am from a village where they don't eat that kind of bread. You refuse? I refuse. I treat it as I have said nothing," replied Fix. "And let us take a drink." "All right, let's take a drink." Passepartout felt more and more overcome by their intoxication. Fix, understanding that he must at all hazards separate him from his master, wanting to finish him. On the table there were a few pipes of optimum. Fix slipped one into Passepartout's hand, who took it, lifted his lip, and lit it a few puffs, and fell over, his head stupefied under the influence of nartok. "At least," said Fix, seeing Passepartout out of the way, "Mr. Fogg will not be informed in the time of the departure of the Cardack, and if he leaves he will be at least without his Frenchman." And then he left, after paying his bill.